As you know, we're doing this for our How podcast, Humans of Wharton. hmm And we are looking to get not only your resume, corporate kind of spiel, and update. We want to get to know you, get your story. If your life were to be a bestseller, what would be the tagline, Rosh?
Oh my goodness, this one. I was trying to think about it and I came up with all kinds of different ideas. One was like comedy of errors. Another one was, you know, don't stop believing. Like that was more inspirational one. The other one was kind of like the little engine that could like, just keeps going. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's probably a mixture of all of those, right? So, there's just and it's good fun, right? Because your life should be a mixture of like, different mistakes, different things that you make, and you can go back and laugh at them and find the humor in whatever you've done. But also kind of the idea of just being resilient and just, we all have things that we have to overcome. We have our shortcomings. We have obstacles that are placed in our ways. And you do just have to kind of figure out a way around it. And so I'd like to think of my life as that I've managed to kind of do that most of the time successfully, or at least like managed to do it. So yeah, so those were the ones that kind of came to mind when you asked that question.
I think Elena mentioned this in the beginning, that you two know each other so well. She mentioned that you were the first person that she met when she got to Wharton. So I'm sure you guys have a very special relationship and know each other so deeply. So here I am just coming into the fold, and what I have access to me is your LinkedIn profile. And, I'm a recent graduate, and so I still am coming along in my career, and I see your profile, and it is one of the most like impressive things I've seen. So well, just tailored, like every experience like just fits together and it makes so much sense. But when I hear you opening and talking about your tagline, you talk about kind of like the little engine that could, and all like these follies that you've had, which I think from the outside looking in, it's very shocking to see that that's what the first thing that you would say is. But I do think that this is like a natural part of life. That's like a lot of us, I think we know that this is something that happens in life, but it is really important to hear that like this is like from someone who is as successful as you are, has gone through these challenges. So my question for you is when you've faced these challenges, and you can speak to some specific ones if you want, what is the inner dialogue that you have with yourself to kind of get through those things? Because I know like they're inevitable, like you say. What do you say to yourself that allows you to know that this is just, a roadblock and not something that's necessarily going to stop you forever?
So like actually applying to business school was one. And actually I applied the year before Wharton. I don't even remember where I applied to. And I got in nowhere. I got into no school. Everyone was like, not interested in you. And it was a learning experience because I really had, and I guess a little background about me is, I grew up in New York City, my whole life. My family, we're immigrants, so we came from Guyana. I actually moved here when I was 4. And so I was kind of one of the first in my kind of definitely my immediate family, or even kind of my close family amongst like my cousins, to think about sort of higher beyond kind of college, right? So a lot of us were, first time going to college, but then it was even like, okay, now you've finished college, now what? And business school, I tell my family and they're like, what the hell is that? Like, who does that? They're like, shouldn't you be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, like a profession? And business school doesn't mean anything to them. And so like there was nobody really to give me any guidance. So I think I just kind of like applied, and I try to get some, whatchamacallit, some, what are those, referrals, and people write recommendations, etc.
Right.
But I didn't really have any guidance. Like there was really nobody I knew that could help me figure out, well, this is actually the way that you have to kind of, look at these things. And they are looking for specific types of candidates, and you need to position yourself this way. And so I had no idea about that. And I kind of just had applied without really understanding sort of what's the game to get into these graduate schools. And so the fact that I didn't get in, I was kind of like, oh my God, I'm a loser. Like, what's going to happen to me? And, and it wasn't like it was that bad. I was at American Express. I had a great job. I was fine and settled. But at that point, it was kind of like, well, what do I really want in life? And that was sort of that inner kind of conversation that you're talking about. And like, what can I do to go around it? And I guess that's always been, it's probably just, being immigrants, it's kind of like, well, this is my opportunity. Why can't I do it? Like if other people can do it, why can't I do it? Right. And so I went to a good school. I have, great work experience here. So there's something that I need to do that I didn't do the first time that I could figure out how to do it the second time. And so, I actually talked to more of my own sort of peers who had been going through the process to understand what they did and how they sort of wrote their essays, and then I retook my GMATs too, right? So like looked at my whole sort of candidacy, and sort of where it was more systematic about my approach, which made all the difference in the world. But it was really just trying to think about what can I learn from what I had done, after I've like wiped off the tears and I'm, relaxed and I'm feeling better is, I know that I do want to go to business school and I want to get these kinds of skills coming out of it. And so then how can I make myself sort of better positioned for it? And so that's kind of what I did. And that was that inner conversation, was just kind of looking around and seeing like, who can I ask for help? And, and I think that's the other thing that I've kind of learned really, I'd say more recently than in the past, is that being open to asking people for help and not always sort of appearing as though you know everything or, you've got it under control. Because I think that actually, by being more vulnerable to others, they're actually more willing to help you. And that's something I've only really learned, like, I want to say the last 2 to 3 years of my life.
Wow.
It's a hard lesson where it feels like, oh, I always have to have it together. I always have to be polished. I can't sort of look like I don't know what I'm doing. But I do think actually showing a little bit of like, hey, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. And, can you help me? That there's some that people that are going to blow you off, which is, it's life. But there are a lot more that will actually try to help you.
How do you feel that the Wharton institution has helped you or like pushed you to know that you can reach out to your network, and like have you had any have you seen benefits to that, like tapping into that network?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, kind of used it a bit kind of throughout, like, and I want to say even just in at Wharton, the whole recruiting process, you definitely realize the benefit of having other alum that were there. And even, when I graduated from Wharton, I worked at Diageo, and there was a decent amount of Wharton graduates there. And so there was just like a camaraderie, just a little something different that you felt connecting to them versus kind of the other coworkers that you had, just because you knew that you came from kind of the same place. And, there were other people there from Kellogg and other great business schools, but it was just feeling like, oh, I kind of, have a greater respect for this person just because we went through the similar experience. I'd have to say kind of throughout the years, I've definitely, utilized the network. So I think when I worked at Equinox, I had gotten the interview already, but I think it definitely helped that I was able to kind of reach out to an alum who was working there And so that we had a chance to chat. And similarly, my job at Citi, there was someone that was there. And so she was able to kind of put me in touch with like the hiring manager and that kind of stuff. And the last few months, I actually left my job like a few months ago. And the Wharton network has been unbelievable, really. And I'd say really it's your class, maybe the year above, year below, that are probably the most receptive to kind of reaching out from the most part. But, you know, I was able to schedule conversations and talk to people who I haven't talked to in years as I was preparing for different interviews and just reaching out. And everybody said yes. You know, all of my classmates, nobody said no.
Wow.
They were too busy. And they all had great insights. And you could really just appreciate coming from a network of such sort of just a strong network of people who really were and are kind of the experts in their industry and can provide such insights. And they were nice people, right? Like it was fun to catch up, and so it has made the process of looking for a job more enjoyable when I come after having a nice conversation and I feel energized coming out of it, not like, oh my God.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's definitely been huge from that perspective. And then coming out with friends like Elena and other friends from school, it's just different to have a group of people that are sort of like-minded. You know, I have friends from college and stuff like that, but it's just a different kind of conversation, especially when it comes to work and kind of what you want from your professional life, that I find I can have with my Wharton girlfriends that I don't necessarily have the same with my non-Wharton girlfriends, and that we understand sort of the value of trying to push yourself, wanting sort of career success, being able to kind of network and put each other in touch with different people. Like there just isn't that same from my friends who, you know, I've known for longer, but just from a different time.
You're a mother of three very active kids, very healthy, full of energy. What did you have to sacrifice professionally and personally to get them where they are?
Yeah. Great question. I don't know if I would say it's sacrifice as much as it's you have to make trade-offs, right, here and there. And I think depending on when you talk to me, I would have had different opinions on this topic. So when my children were babies, I never expected I'd want to ever be a stay-at-home mom. That was never my desire. Kind of growing up, my mother worked, so that was the example I had. So I always thought, oh, I'll want to work too when my kids are growing up. Like, and then I had them, and I was like, oh, what do you mean I have to go back to work? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I have this little baby, and I'm going to turn it over to a stranger to watch, and she's going to watch this baby all day, and I'm going to come in like for an hour every night, and then that's it. Like, what kind of world is this? So I have to say, like, at that point, I felt like, and maybe that was a sacrifice in terms of going back to work, because I didn't want to go back to work. And especially it was, especially my first baby, because I think I went back after 17 weeks, in which, you know, by US standards, I had a long maternity leave. You know, for the Europeans who might be listening, they'd be like, whatever. And I wished at that point I lived in a different country so I could have more time off. But it was really difficult to go back to work when I had a small baby and be the same person who I was before I had that baby going back to work. Like, I felt it was two different people coming back into the office. So that was really a rough transition, and having to get used to that. And I think one of the things I've learned, and I think one of the lessons that I think women should kind of think about and consider, is that there's going to be ebbs and flows in your career. And there's going to be times you're really going to, you know, be on high energy and want to go for it. And there's going to be some times when you're like, you know what, I'm okay to be on coast for the moment. and both men and women, actually. I don't think it's just for women, where it's okay to coast. And I think that was a hard lesson for me to understand and to feel, is that, you know what, it's okay to kind of just be okay where I am right now, because I have other priorities outside of just my work life, and learning how to kind of balance both. And that was really hard to figure out how to do that, because I wasn't used to doing that. I was used to kind of being on all gears going into work, and now feeling like, work is good, but I also now have something else that's really just as important, if not more important, than my work life. I actually have another human being I'm actually responsible for. And even the second one, that I was more overwhelmed than having the first, that actually at that point I wanted to go back to work, because there was 2 of them at home and they were toddlers, and it was like, get me out of here. So that was a very different experience the second time around, where it was like, yeah, please. Any work will be so much better than being at home. And so I think, and again, I was still okay kind of doing what I was doing. And then I ended up kind of switching jobs, and I can't say I've always felt like I ever had the right balance. I feel like I felt like I was sort of, not doing well at either, for the most part. And I think the biggest thing is not feeling guilty for when you do take time to spend with your kids. Whether it's because they're sick, or you want to take them to a doctor's appointment, or you want to watch a game, that, like, whatever, your work is always going to be there. And it's okay to take a half hour, 45 minutes and go do something with the kids in the middle of the day if you can. I was lucky I was able to kind of work from home on Fridays. But I did feel guilty doing that. But, a woman told me years later, she's like, men don't feel guilty. Like, they go out and they go to and I've heard them, they go to their kid's soccer game on a Friday afternoon. They are more than happy to kind of take off and talk about their kids' games that they went off to. And there's no guilt. And there's no like sneaking around. They just do it. And so why should I feel guilty? And that's something I've kind of learned to not do as much, or not feel as much. But yeah, so I don't know if I really answered that question, but I would just say that it's just, it's complicated. Sometimes I'm like, it felt like I did the right thing, that I kept working. Other times I think, it might have been nice if I was able to like take 6 months off, and just kind of focus. Right now I've had time to kind of hang out with my kids, and it's been really great, but I actually want to go back to work. But I'm grateful that I've actually been able to have this time, where I've never had this time before. So, and now they're older. So it's just, we're in a different sort of stage where I feel like I can go gung ho into work and feel like they're pretty good by themselves. And I can get a babysitter who can help manage the stuff, but they've got school, they've got other activities. And I can be much more focused myself and feel more peaceful when I'm more focused on my work.
I'm curious if like there are any specific causes that are really important or to you, or that really speak to you, and if you've had the opportunity to use your status and your platform to kind of address them, or to kind of, I guess, maybe communicate to the world about them.
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in I mentioned my parents were immigrants, and I went to school in the Bronx. And so I've grown up in kind of New York City, and New York City has a really like interesting background when it comes to like education, and especially kind of the minority communities within the city and the public school system. And so I went to school. I was a smart kid. I did well in school. And I got into this program when I was in elementary school called Prep for Prep. And through that, I was able to get a scholarship to go to a private school in the city. And And through that experience, kind of one of the real things that it's just has highlighted kind of throughout my life is the importance of education, and how by having a strong education and having a focus on education, you can kind of overcome so many things. And so, and especially this summer, you hear about Black Lives Matter and all of the social unrest. And I think, we talk about defunding the police, but you don't hear investing in education. And I think that is the biggest sort of barrier to getting anybody to change their financial situation, change their social situation, kind of break the cycle of poverty. Anything is having access to great education. And there's never, we have teachers unions. We make it so difficult to really educate kids in the United States. And I think it's really a shame, because that would make so much of a difference. Like I just think it would make a huge difference. So I've been, in the last couple of years, really the last year, I've been much more involved in the Board of Ed here in New Rochelle. And so they have, New Rochelle is like a city, but it's a small city compared to New York City. It's 10,000 kids here that we have in New Rochelle, whereas New York City has like 1 million, I think. And it's pretty diverse population. So you have Black, Latino, it's like almost 30, 30, 30, like Black, Latino, white. And then you've got like 10% South Asian and something else. And like the rest of us are in the other, 10% bucket. And so I've been much more active in the Board of Ed, because you can see, and I look at the numbers. My kids are in the public school, and they do kind of share the numbers of like the achievement gap and all of those things. And you can see them in the numbers, and it starts very early on. And it's interesting because not just racial achievement gap, it actually has a lot to do with like your socioeconomic status. And like if you're poor, then there's a higher likelihood of just underperformance. And so that's where I've been trying to use my platform or my experience to help kind of make sure that we are able to better educate the kids in New Rochelle and in our system. Because I think, yes, we have our problems, but we're also small, relatively so, that our tax dollars, like I don't pay a little bit of tax, I pay a good amount of tax here in New Rochelle. And so there's actually good funding for the school. So there's really no reason why our kids shouldn't be performing at much better levels than they are. And so I've been recently involved in the looking for a superintendent search, and just being more vocal kind of within the community, much more so than I have in the past. And, the great thing is that it's a small enough community where I feel like I could actually have an impact in my community, which is great. So that's been one cause, and just education in general, where, I try to donate money to different kind of educational programs. But that's an area where I've been trying to kind of, give back. And recently as well, I've been just trying to get my kids to volunteer, because I do want them to see that they are privileged, and that they have things that other people don't. And so, I've been trying to take them out, because they get these half-day Wednesdays, like ridiculous bullshit. And I was like, all right, so I'll find an activity for you to do those half days. We'll go volunteer. And so I think just trying to get them to see and understand sort of where their place is. Because I think there's a quote, which is, to whom much is given, much is expected, or something. I forget what it is. But I want them to understand that, because they have that, and they are coming from a place of privilege. And so they need to be able to understand not everybody has that, and that you shouldn't take for granted all of these things, because you look outside and we could see the food banks and the lines are, ridiculous. And that, there are a lot of people that are struggling as well.
Rosh, tell us about failing forward.
So I mentioned I left my job, and it was, they were making cuts, so they kind of cut my role. And so I was having a conversation with Jeff, and he was kind of like, well, it's one of those that you want to fail forward. And I think it was also just like through the interviewing process that some some of them will go well, some don't, but like, what do you learn from it? So that it's not like, yeah, you might call it a failure, but as long as you're failing forward, then there's nothing wrong with that because you're learning from that experience. And so even, from my last job, I could think, I was just thinking the other day, like if I go into a new job, like first thing I'm going to do is understand the talent and the people I have that's on my team and making sure I have the right talent because I didn't do that the first time, and then, making sure I set X, Y, Z up. So really kind of what are the things that you can learn and that you can take from that experience so that the next time if you do fail, you would have even kind of learned something even greater than where you began. And I do think it's kind of an important thing to think about because, I think as Wharton graduates, Penn graduates, it's sort of, oh, I have to be successful. I always have to be successful. And you realize that, and I watch my children, when they learned to walk, they fell all the time. Like they were falling all the time. And it's only now they walk around and they look like it's not a problem, but it's okay to fall. And that's the way you're going to learn. And you just have to, you can fall 10 times, but eventually you're going to figure it out. And so as long as you kind of keep failing forward, you're going to figure it out. And I think that's really kind of the key takeaway from that is that failure isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you need to fail before you can actually kind of figure out where you need to go. And I kind of think about that right now where I feel like, I failed, that my job didn't want me anymore. But like, talking to you, Sean, and you asked that question, I was like, actually, because of that, I have time to donate myself to the school and to our school system and be much more involved than I would have been before. And feeling like, hey, I'm actually trying to do something for greater good, not just for my own personal benefit, which I wouldn't have had or I wouldn't have done otherwise. And so yeah, where it's like, what the hell? Like, if you think that there's something, like, go shake the tree and figure it out. And so I do think that you can't really be very successful unless you're willing to fail.
Your MBA was in finance and marketing. So did you work in finance for a bit after graduating?
So I did, but I didn't really spend very long doing that after I graduated. Okay. I spent like a year doing it and I hated it. So
what was that transition like? What about you like makes you interested in marketing?
Yeah. So coming into business school, I actually was in marketing at Equinox, at American Express. I had taken on kind of an investments and business development role probably like a year before, but it was still primarily marketing. And I went into Wharton wanting to go into finance. I mean, maybe I got swept up in the whole finance thing, probably at Wharton, just because it was Wharton and hey, what the hell? Everybody's finance here. But also I did want to get more of a quantitative background because I did think it would make me a better business person in general. To really understand kind of the numbers. And going into business school, I thought I was going to be an investment banker, right? So like everybody else that was at Wharton.
Right.
And then I did all the investment banking interviews and they were like, you don't have sharp enough elbows for us. Like, yeah, you could do the job, but we don't think you're like tough enough to join our club. So that was kind of the feedback I got. So then I ended up at Diageo. And I had kind of applied through the finance area. And I got my internship and then I ended up going there after. And I realized I hated accounting, like the numbers and cents and the putting the assets and the this and that, like that stuff I couldn't be bothered with. Luckily for me, I was actually in the innovation arm or what they call decision support. So I got to do much more of the interesting stuff where it was like looking at the market and evaluating what's our opportunity, what's our growth opportunity, where do we think we can make revenue in 5 years, and really kind of building business cases for new innovations. So I got to look at our supply costs and really had a good understanding of actually how we made money as a company. So it turned out to be great because then to take that and move into marketing when a lot of the marketing people had no idea, gave me an advantage because then I was seen as the numbers person, which was kind of funny. But it's all perception, right? Like, oh, I'm the numbers person now. Okay, great. But I've used it to my advantage. Like I've used that kind of throughout my career now, is that I am, and I am a data oriented individual. I like to look at the numbers and I want to know what the numbers say, and that's how we can help make our decisions. So, but that was helpful to kind of bring that into the marketing side. And I realized, and I have to say part of it where I wanted to go in finance versus marketing was I felt like all women just go into marketing, and I didn't want to go into marketing just because that's where they put the women. But then I realized I don't really want to do the finance. So like, I'm going to go back into marketing. So, you know, I'll join all the other ladies that are in marketing. But yeah, like that was how I kind of ended up back into marketing, and I've had marketing and product roles where I've had to manage like a whole P&L and sort of understand both the customer and how you make money. And I think I'm most comfortable when I have those roles where it's kind of a combination of the two, because you know, in business, you're not just there to make pretty products. You want to sell them. You want to drive revenue. You want to have margin. You want to have profit. Like that's the whole point. So,
Yep.
So that's what I enjoy. I guess when you were talking about my thing that makes me the best marketer, I'd say my thing and why I enjoy marketing is I love understanding customers and thinking about what the customer, putting myself in the shoes of the customer, thinking through their eyes as to how they do things. That has been what's, you know, made me more successful, is that it's something I truly do enjoy, and probably what I would have hated if I was on the finance side, because there's no customer. Who am I talking to all day? Like just
Talking
other
to spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Roshanie, finish this sentence. Wharton is a place where, and then blank.
Wharton is a place you can achieve your dreams.
Yeah, I mean,
what dream did you achieve?
Hey, you. I got my MBA. I mean, I've been able to come out of there, and if I've set my mind to finding a role here or there, I've been able to do it. You know, like I wanted to have a career in marketing. I have a career in marketing. I feel like I have the tools to do what I need to do. Like I'm not lacking in anything at this point. And I think Wharton has given me, and I'd say if anything, for some people, whether it's the credential, it's the confidence, it's the actual mechanics, it's the network. I mean, for anybody, it could be a number of those things. It could be one of those things. I'd say for me, it's probably like two or three of those things, right? Just that I have that, and I feel like, yeah, I can do it. And I have a network that if I can't, I can call upon and ask like, hey, how do you do that? Or I need to recruit somebody who looks like this. Can you find me that person? Or do you know that person? And so, yeah, I think it opens the doors. Wharton is a place that opens the doors for you. And it's up to you to figure out which ones you want to go in and how you want to sort of play the game, but it puts you in it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic. How, I mean, yeah, like it doesn't even matter what your dream is, right? Like it just opens up those doors for you so that whatever your dream is, you can accomplish it. And that's like what's so important.
Going into business school, I think it was important for me to know what I wanted to get out of it. And I'd say that's also like a key thing for anybody going to any kind of graduate school, is you need to be clear, because you are an adult and you have had time work experience now. Like, what do you want to get out of that experience? And making sure that when you get there, you get those things out of it. And so I knew going into school, you know, I wanted to build my financial acumen. That was like a big thing coming from a liberal arts school. I wanted to participate in these dance activities because, you know, I wanted to have fun while I was there. And third was, you know, I took on a bunch of different leadership activities. And, you know, the idea about sort of failing and trying things that you weren't sure if you'd feel comfortable doing is I put myself in positions where, you know, I knew that I truly was uncomfortable in, but I I knew that that's what I was going to do going into school because I wanted to feel comfortable doing those things. All right, guys, I have to run.
It was amazing meeting you, Roshanie. Seriously, I loved just picking your brain about things and hearing about how you got to where you are today. I hope we can stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
These products, they speak for themselves. They speak volumes. Like I said, I have found relief. I'm sleeping, and my body for the last 6 days is actually finally feeling like,